foil in the night, shadows on the wall, nothing left to fight.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Everyone's Addicted. Today's guest, Caroline, has graciously come on to share her experience and her knowledge about addiction and how she can help other people. So, welcome, Caroline, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Caroline Kobelinsky. I am a therapist in Richardson, Texas, which is right outside of Dallas. Um, I've been working in substance use for about the last 10 years and have my own kind of personal experience with that. Um, yeah, and I love what I do. I like sharing the tools that I have with people because I think that sometimes the nuance of sobriety, kind of what that entails, can get lost. And so sharing my experience and some of the tools that I have, I think can be really helpful to your listeners.
It's
Um, so I specialize in harm reduction. When I worked in inpatient, we were strictly 12 steps, completely abstinent based. And that worked well because we had, a closed kind of facility. And
mm,
so as I have been in private practice and more in an outpatient setting, harm reduction has been much more the approach that I use. And so I deal with process addictions as well as substance use. And so figuring out, what does recovery look like specifically for this person? I think that, I'm very familiar with the 12 steps. I believe in the 12 steps. I think that, the 12 steps is really like life for dummies.
they're
Like
the
you,
beginning of the journey, right?
yes, yes. And so like the 12 steps are what people that don't go around causing a shit show, like that's what they do. Like they sit down at the end of the day and they think, what went well today? What did not go well today? What do I need to do different tomorrow? Are there people that I didn't treat well today? How do I mend that relationship? Like that's just kind of part of being a human. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think the
Being
12 steps,
self-aware, kind of, right?
yes, absolutely. And so I think that the 12 steps set people up for that. But I think kind of what gets lost is that the trauma that comes from addiction of, really kind of
Or even
any
mental
kind.
health, too, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And so I think, one of the things that I'm always talking with my clients about that are in recovery or are trying to get sober or are trying to manage whatever they're doing is, what's the driving force of this whole thing? Because nobody just wakes up. Like, I think I've dealt with one person that I was like, okay, probably if you hadn't like hurt your knee, you wouldn't have gotten addicted to pain pills and you wouldn't have ended up on heroin.
Well, that's a
I've
lot of
worked,
people.
yes. And so I have worked with hundreds of people. And so often there is attachment wounding that happens. And, even with substances, whatever your compulsive behavior is, starts off with a secure attachment. And a secure attachment says, I'm okay and you're okay.
Well, I'll
And then,
even say, like, I pick my skin, which is called fascia, right?
mhm,
And that is something that has to do with when I don't feel like I have control of my life. That's what I've been told
absolutely.
is my solution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the
Yes.
same thing as like what you're saying. It's like I'm treating myself with doing it that. So it's not necessarily always substance abuse. And then
Right.
also like the people that pull their hair out, like there's a lot of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Trichotillomania. Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say that all addiction is really compulsive behaviors because we are feeling one way, we don't want to feel that way, so we do something to change that. And so whether that is skin picking or trichotillomania or, gambling or sex or food or whatever it is, we are looking for the relief from the behavior. And
That
so everybody has coping skills. Some are just more functional than others. Um, but we all, and I think that that's what's really important in really getting rid of the stigma around things is that we all have those behaviors. And so some of us just take them, more extreme than others. And like I said, some are some are acceptable, like people that are runners. It's
Mhm.
acceptable to run marathons.
That's
Like
why
that
I
is,
say everyone's addicted because everyone has something. There's positive addictions, I guess you could say, and
yeah,
negative addictions, but it's still always something, like you said, to escape or just to cope with what's going on in your life, and
right. And
instead of
so, yeah,
going
go
to like
ahead.
act, or I'm just saying, instead of actually like figuring out why you feel that way, you find something that you like that helps you, kind of like you said with running, that helps you clear your mind or whatever. But
Right.
realistically, there's still an underlying issue there.
Exactly. And so that's part of my story. So I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 when I was 25. I've had it my whole life. I did this big research project on it for one of my grad classes. And I was like, holy shit, I've like had this since like I can remember. And so as time went on and kind of my mood cycled, so bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 differ from bipolar 1 has full blown manic episodes, whereas bipolar 2 has hypomanic episodes. And
Because, yeah,
so,
I never understood that because I know people who have the manic episodes, but I never knew what the difference between the two was,
yes.
right?
Right. So I think of hypomania as kind of like a really good mood with a really hard edge. And so it's like things are going. You may be, sleeping a little less. You may have more energy, but you're not like out buying 7 cars in a week and
Hmm.
like ruining your credit, which is what happens, or like thinking you're Jesus or something,
Well,
which is what happens.
I had a friend who had a manic episode and he stole his mom's car, and we live in Canada, and he drove all the way to Las Vegas and like in
Wow.
a manic episode, right? So like I know
Yes.
that I know more about the type 1 opposed to the type 2, right? Because of
Right.
people I know, you know what I mean? Like I have agoraphobia, right? So like for me, I understand that like there is different aspects to all of these kind of
Mm,
mental health issues. And like I did kind of the same thing. I went to school for psychology to try to figure out what was wrong with me
absolutely.
because I couldn't figure it out, right? And I was using substances and I didn't want to use substances. I just wanted to figure it out.
Right.
And so that's
So, yeah, I mean, that's what happens to so many people. And so in high school, I had a lot of depressive episodes. I would say during high school, I spent most of it pretty depressed. And so I figured out that I could medicate with alcohol and pot and cocaine, and that helped me manage my mood.
I
And
was the
so,
same way because I was bullied. I like had the same thing. I was very depressed, and that's where my agoraphobia started because I was afraid of being attacked. So I'd always
yeah,
have to hide somewhere. But at the same time, I would party, I guess you could say, and use cocaine and marijuana and ecstasy just to like get rid of it. I couldn't like
yeah, to feel
deal with it.
normal.
Yeah, just to feel normal. And as I got older, I just kind of moved more into alcohol, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
But it still never solved the problem. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So, summer after my senior year, I got a DWI, and my parents were like, we're done with this. And so I went to treatment in Louisiana, and I was sober for 2 or 3 years. And then started drinking again recreationally, and it was kind of a no big woo. And
I did
then,
the same thing. I got a DUI. I quit. I went to AA. I quit drinking for 3 years. I 13th step. The boy dumped me, and then I dove right into it.
back into it, yes.
Yeah,
So I when I was 25, I was in undergrad and I was depressed. And so my psychiatrist put me on, I don't know if I think it was Zoloft because I had taken that at some point before. And
yeah.
it
I've
flipped
been
me
on Zoloft.
into, yeah, it flipped me into a hypomanic episode. And that's how I got diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And it was one of the most freeing things that has ever happened to me because there was now a reason that I felt the way that I did. And I
Mm.
think, for so many people, there is underlying mental health issues. That's what drives their addiction. And,
Exactly.
I think that's what's so tricky about the 12 steps is, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, these character defects, they're really just parts of you that have been protecting you your whole life. And they have gotten to a point where they're limiting instead of protecting. But for me, that's not verbiage that I like. Like, I just say that that's a part of you that has protected you up to now. And now it's not working anymore. So, like,
That
what can
makes
we do
sense.
to do something else? Yeah.
That makes sense because, like, once I got my mental health assessment done at the methadone clinic, it was so freeing to be able to actually understand myself. And I had gone to 12-step programs. I knew what my character defects were, but I didn't know why I had them. You know what I mean?
Right. And when you don't know why you have something, you feel really trapped because there's no solution. And
Mm,
so, I mean, if you're just sort of at the bottom of yourself and are like, hey, I'm a fucking drug addict, what's the answer? I mean, AA can get you sober, but I think if you don't do the trauma work around it, it's really hard to stay sober.
that's
I was at,
exactly my
yeah,
whole feeling towards it too. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you because I know that you've like think the same way and that you really help people get to the core of things and help them understand
right.
themselves.
Yeah. So I am a trained trauma therapist. I'm trained in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. A lot of people have heard of EMDR, but I'm also certified in accelerated resolution therapy, ART. And
I've never heard of that before. So what is that?
it is wild. It is like EMDR on steroids. It has completely changed my life. I mean, I just can't. But I also still love EMDR. I train people in EMDR. I still do EMDR with my therapist. I have two therapists. I have an EMDR therapist and an ART therapist. Um, and but ART is the most gentle way that I have ever seen to process trauma. One of the things that I love about it is that you only have to share what you want to share. As we have learned about secondary trauma and re traumatization, a lot of times when people share their story, it re traumatizes them because they're brought back to the limbic state that they were in when
Yeah.
it happened.
And
And
that's the
so,
thing with the 12 steps is you have to repeat your story over and over again. And it just
yes,
makes you feel like that's just like living in the past all the time. And it is triggering. I totally agree
yes.
with that.
Yeah, and so with ART, it's you're playing through this thing, and it's all about body sensations. And so the more that we have learned in the field of psychology, the more people understand that our bodies keep the score. And so trauma is stored in our bodies; it's stored in our limbic system. And so that's why people can smell something and they're right back to, they smell their grandmother's perfume and they're right back to, growing up and doing that's like a
Hmm.
positive one. Um, but then people also, like a lot of people that have been sexually abused or assaulted, most of the time it is not the assault that is the trauma. That's the trigger. It's the sound of like a zipper unzipping or something like that, something that seemingly doesn't have anything to do with it. And
Hmm.
so um, with addiction, it's the same way. It's a trauma response. And that, what I was talking about, that secure attachment, if you have something that works to change the way that you feel, well, why wouldn't you use that? Like, that's what makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think including the trauma component of whatever kind of compulsive behavior you have, that is what that's what I think is what really keeps people sober if they're doing the things that they need to do, that daily reprieve. If you're doing
Hmm.
that sort of thing, but you're also working on the reason that you got to that space, that to me is kind of a complete picture of sobriety. That's not just
Exactly.
physical sobriety, that's
Hmm.
emotional and mental sobriety as well.
And I think that's the most important part of long-term sobriety is doing that and not just like, yes, going to meetings is good, but at the same time, we do have to work on our mental health because most people,
Mhm.
it's underlying mental health issues is why you do it. Like for me, when I started taking opiates, it's because my dad had passed away. My aunt had like stolen my inheritance. I had to sell my
Wow.
childhood home and I couldn't handle it. I had a newborn and somebody introduced me to Percocets and that took all of that away. You know what
Away.
I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of me being smart and going and seeing like a trauma therapist, I took the opiates. You know what I mean? Because it was just an easy solution instead of
Absolutely.
working, which I think it at the same time, we have to put the work in. And
Hmm.
whatever it is that works for you is
Absolutely.
like to get I just think you just need to get to the bottom of why you're doing it. You know what I mean? And like I know why I do it now, but at the time it was more just, oh, this feels good and I feel relief. You know what I mean? But like you said, like with trauma therapy, you're actually understanding yourself and with I can't remember how you said the other therapy because it's something that I don't really know much about,
Hmm.
but it's like the same thing. It's just more gentle, I think you said, right? Like it's
Yes. So
more,
EMDR is very open-ended. It is kind of tapping into this memory, the body sensations, the lie that you believe that goes with this thing. And through the bilateral stimulation. So when trauma happens, those memories are stored in a fractured way. And so pictures are stored in the right side of our brain and words are stored in the left side of our brain. And so when there is trauma, that gets stuck in your limbic system that's back here. And so our limbic system is what is responsible for fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And
mhm.
so in caveman days, it was really important for your limbic system to be in full working order because you were going to get like eaten by a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah,
um, and so our limbic system, while it has developed over time, that is still the core of who we are. And so when there is trauma, it gets stuck back there in your limbic system. And so every night while we're asleep, your hippocampus, which is over here, is filtering through what happened during the day, like what was important, what wasn't important, what's long term, what's short term, what do I remember, what do I not remember. And so when there is trauma, those memories are stored in a fractured way. Like if we think about kind of a library that it's
hmm,
succinctly done, and when there's trauma, it just gets kind of put all over and it's not the whole book. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I know even from like my husband, there like will say that he had a traumatic childhood and there's so many parts that he doesn't remember, but now that he's sober and his
Mm.
brain has started to function properly, those memories have been coming back, but they weren't there
Right.
before, right? So it was fractured pieces of memories that are starting to fully
Mhm.
form back into what he like I guess would remember now, right? And
Yes,
so I totally
exactly.
get what you're saying. And I know that our body also stores those things too. So like you said, with like a sound of a zipper, it's just because it's something that's you're in you, like almost like I guess you would say like I don't want to say like poison, but like it's like something that's just ingrained in you that you don't realize. So I get what you're saying.
Right. Well, and so like if we think about, I carry stress in my hips and I
I
won't
carry it in
think
my
about that.
shoulders.
Yes, like I won't think about that until my hips don't hurt and I'm like, "Holy crap." Like my hips have hurt for the last week. And so our bodies carry stress all over. And so with trauma work, the more that we have learned, the more that we tap into, okay, where's that stored in your body? And so with EMDR, it's a much more open process, which is ART. And I'll send you the links for this stuff. ART is much more close ended. And so they both work. And like I said, I do both of them. Um, and I just use them for different things. And the thing is, if we don't work out those body sensations, our limbic system goes back to the fear that's over here and it reacts to this kind of benign situation over here from
Mm.
this spot back here. And so something happens and people just fly off the handle, and you're like, whoa, like you're crazy. What is wrong with you? But they're not in this moment right here. They're back here when they were like 5 or 12 or something like that. And that's what they're reacting from.
And I totally like from I'm at my family's house, but I will say that like my sister-in-law sometimes will randomly fly off the handle over something, and there's no reason to, but that just makes sense now. I get why she does it. It's something from their childhood because I know that
Mm-hmm.
their childhood was very stressful. That some it's a trigger from her childhood, not what's really going on in the moment. So right,
Right.
that makes so much sense. That
And
may help
that's
me
what makes
understand
it,
her.
yes, like it allows you to have grace for people. And, I think where there has been compulsive behaviors lead us to the lowest point of ourselves. And that in and of itself is traumatic. And so I think that when people don't know those things about us, it's hard for them to extend us grace because they're just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like you're
That's
causing a
what
scene.
that's
Yeah.
where her brother's like my husband's like when she does it. And like after you saying that, it makes so much sense as to why it happens. But he's like, I don't understand why she's like this all the time. Well, now I'm going to explain this to him later that there's a reason for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All behavior is communication. And so some behavior is more helpful in communicating than others. But, with kids, with adults, all behavior is communication. And so if we are paying attention to that and really trying to understand the other person, we're going to be able to extend more grace. And I mean, sometimes Brene Brown talks about that people that go around thinking that everybody's really doing kind of the best they can, they're happier than other people. And, I think that that can get taken to the extreme. Like, if your best is that you murder people or that you assault children, like,
Mhm.
your best is not safe for society.
No,
And so you have to be in a situation where people are protected. But I think that that's so huge and just kind of a paradigm shift of where people can get if we're thinking, hey, they're trying their hardest. And sometimes people's hardest
it's
and
not
best
safe.
looks, yeah. And so, one of my favorite questions, I was just talking to somebody that works in my building. One of my favorite questions is he was asking about his son and has some anxiety and different kinds of things. And I said, my favorite question to ask people is help me understand. So, when people have gone into that limbic state of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, they are either hyper aroused, so everything is going a mile a minute. Their heart rate is raised, their blood pressure's up, they're getting ready to, if something is going to happen, they're going to be able to handle it. Or some people go into hypo arousal, which I think of as like a possum. I have a client that, so we were talking through her hypo arousal, and she's like, it's like I play dead.
Hmm.
Um,
My husband
and
does that. He shuts right down, and I
yes,
have to
yeah.
pull things out of him because I can tell he's upset, but he shuts right down, just like you said.
Yeah. And so in those situations, bringing it back down to, can you help me understand what's happening? That's an inclusive question. And so when we get into a limbic state, um, our frontal lobe goes offline. And so our frontal lobe is where decision making happens. It likes options, it lives in both and situations. Um, it's just where we do our best thinking. And so when people get into a limbic state, which is what happens when people are sober without the tools that they need to stay
Hmm.
sober, it that goes offline and it's just like, what do I have to do to survive? And so, I think that that's another asking
That's
that question of what could help me understand what's happening.
that's
That is an
exactly
inclusive question.
that's exactly what happened to me when I relapsed after the 3 years because I got dumped. My like reaction to the emotions was to just go back to it. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? So that is exactly what I'm just trying to put it into my own context to understand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
is exactly why I did that because I didn't have any other tools
Hmm.
besides drinking, right? So I just started drinking again, and it was because it was the only thing I knew how to do to handle the heartbreak. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's so important. There's some 12-step people that are like, no, therapy's bullshit, it's an excuse, like all of that. And my TikTok and my Instagram are both bruised banana counseling. And my SEO guy is like, that doesn't fit, like with CWK counseling. And I'm like, no, it's too funny. But I say that because we're all sort of like a banana walking through life. And um, sometimes you look at people and you're like, oh my God, that's like a huge bruise. Like that's gonna, you're gonna have to cut part of that out. And it's a huge trauma. But then there's other ones of us that just kind of walking through life, you look in the mirror and you're like, I just feel a little bruised and banged up. And so, acknowledging those things I think is really important just because we're all human and we all need a little help from time to time.
Because yeah,
And
I don't
so,
think that you need to be an addict to have this need for this kind of therapy and stuff because
yeah.
all, like you said, have had negative things happen to us in our lives.
Mhm.
Some may be smaller than others, but they still stick with us like baggage following behind you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Until you can figure out why or address it or at least be able to let it go if it's something small, then
Hmm.
you're able to function, like you said, more at a clear, high functional level,
Yes.
at your
Yeah.
best, but in a positive at your best.
Yes. And, as we have understood trauma more and more, as a trauma therapist, I hear some really horrific things. But then I also have people, we talk about big T and little T trauma. So like
Mhm.
big T trauma is like a car accident, you were assaulted, like you were abused, like something that people are like, "Oh my gosh, that's like a big deal." But then there's also little T trauma that goes along with like a parent that's hypercritical, being at a job where you're never good enough. Like there's these little things that happen day by day that have a cumulative effect as this big T trauma over here.
Mhm.
And so, a lot of times I'll start working with people and they're like, my life is not going well. I don't really know why. And I'll kind of start talking through trauma and they're like, nothing has really happened to me. Like I have had a great childhood, like my parents are functional, like, whatever we think a great childhood is. But the
Yeah.
more you kind of get down to it, you're like, well, this was a little dysfunctional and this was a little dysfunctional. And kind of putting all of the pieces together helps people have a better sense of, okay, maybe something huge didn't happen to me, but these dysfunctional, these maladaptive things that did happen, um, it all accumulates into this thing. And,
Bringing
I see that
self-awareness to those things.
absolutely. And, I think that addiction, again, whatever compulsive behavior you have, it doesn't care if it's some big trauma or some little t trauma. Um, it just, we are all searching. And like, I'm a Christian, and I know that people, I'm like, say all the time on my TikTok, I'm like, I was at church this morning. I thought about this. I'm like, some of y'all love Jesus. Some of y'all don't love Jesus. I love Jesus. I also say fuck a lot. So I'm like, I just try to keep it
Yeah,
balanced.
I'm the
Um,
same way. And like for me, like my huge thing in the morning is like to help me kind of keep myself leveled is and help me like it's one of my tools is I'll get up. I'm a smoker, I'll admit it. And
mhm.
I will take my phone and I have like a YouTube channel that says like uplifting things, like like not proverbs, but you know what I mean, Bible verses, and
Yeah.
I'll listen to a couple of them, and it helps me mentally. It changes my whole day. If I don't
Right.
do it, it definitely makes me not in that state, because that's my higher power. I definitely like it. Out of all the programs, I go to Celebrate Recovery, which is
Oh,
Christian,
yeah. Yeah.
and it's not necessarily for addicts. It's kind of for anybody who's struggling,
Yeah.
right? So like I like that aspect too, but I like that because I'm a Christian, like I said, but I also say fuck a lot. I also
Yeah.
it's like I need that little boost of, God in my life to remember the things I'm grateful for, so that I'm not
Right.
in that, I'm not thinking about the negative things or all the things I have to do that day that are overwhelming me, and it puts
Yeah.
me in that on track, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It's my little bit of
Well,
time to by myself.
exactly. And, spirituality is kind of an evolving thing for a lot of people. And so, like, I kind of live by the get in where you fit in kind of model. Um, but whatever, we're all searching for something to fill the hole because we're just human. And
Yep.
that's just the way it is. And so, whatever that looks like for you, like, that's great. But with addiction, and like I said, like this podcast, everybody's addicted to something. Some are just more functional than others.
Yeah.
And we're all searching for that thing. And when we find a compulsive behavior that works, it fills that hole. And you can't blame anybody for that. Like, you can't blame people for not wanting to feel empty. And I think that that's another thing that I love about what you're doing on this podcast is it's creating empathy and space for people that typically would be um, looked down on, and really bringing this global perspective to no, this is not just me. Like, it's not just the heroin addict that is
No, it's
addicted.
not.
It's
It's everybody
yeah.
has something. And also, even like with, say you have, well, my daughter's father is a fentanyl addict, right?
Mhm.
So it's we're like not anymore, but you can become addicted to the addict. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Codependency. My
Yeah.
Lord, codependency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like even with that, so I'll have people come on and talk about having loved ones that are addicts and how
Mhm.
they like maybe try to cope, but they also know they're enabling, and it's just they don't know how to cope with it themselves, and it becomes their own
Absolutely.
addiction, right? And even with a woman I know, her daughter passed away from an overdose. So now she's addicted to getting the person charged for selling like
Yes.
drugs, and she is like obsessed with trying to get this done.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
constant. She even made a billboard. Like it was, and that's like what I mean by like it's just that it's not. She's not addicted to anything, but she's addicted to trying to get her daughter
Yes.
some sort of like
Like
revenge.
justice. Yeah.
Justice. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say revenge, but yeah, justice is a much better word.
Well, and so I was in a relationship with this guy. When I met him, he was sober. He was 5 years sober. And we started dating. It was an absolute shit show from the get go. We dated off and on for 5 years. I mean, I didn't know it when we started dating. He had bipolar 1 disorder and did not like to take his meds. And so even when he was sober, he was addicted to gambling. He was addicted to porn. Like, he cheated on me all the time. Like, it was ridiculous. Um, but I had put 5 years into it, and I was like, what? Like,
Yep.
if I
I
don't do
lost
anything, like, this will be completely wasted.
I lost my
Um,
house because my spouse gambled and didn't pay the mortgage. So
yeah,
it's the same thing, right? But like you're so codependent that you're like, well, I don't
absolutely. You
know,
are trying to, yeah. And so that's what he ended up getting in a really bad car accident when he fell asleep on the way home from the casino one night, and almost died. And ended up that he got addicted to the pain pills. It broke like 7 of his ribs. It broke a lot of his teeth out. Like he really and truly almost died. And so he couldn't ever get off pain pills and he started doing heroin and he ended up overdosing in 2010 and died.
Oh,
Um,
that
and
that is almost exact. Like our stories are so like in some ways because that's exactly like with my spouse. He the gambling, yes, and then
mhm,
he hurt his knee and he had Percocets, and that's how I got introduced to them. But
mhm,
he ended up having heart attacks from the Percocet. Well, we ended up not being able to get Percocets one time, so we bought
mhm.
fentanyl, and the fentanyl wasn't good, and he had three heart attacks, and
Wow.
he ended up living. And I remember the police telling me that they weren't going to leave because they thought it was going to be a crime scene. They didn't think he was going to survive. He did, thank God, but that's how I ended up getting sober. But I mean, it was like the same thing. It was like watching it all play out, and
Yes.
like, why, you know what I mean? And then I see now, like, the heart attacks, and it was just due to him. He was the one that was prescribed the medication, and like
Hmm.
you said, he
Yeah.
just couldn't get off of it. And it led me to take them, and then I really supercharged that addiction because I was more addicted to them than him.
Hmm.
He was taking more and more and more, and then he had the heart attack, and he crashed a car with all of us in it having a heart attack.
Wow.
And then like that ended up getting us all sober and everything. But it was like that codependency that I had was realistically why all of this ended up happening.
Yeah. And that's the same for me. I mean, me managing his behavior and my inability to be okay if he wasn't okay. I mean, just it was absolute insanity. And I look back on it and I'm like, what the fuck? Um,
Mhm.
it took me a long time in therapy to really work through the trauma of our relationship and then the trauma of him dying. Um, and me figuring out like, okay, who without him and without me being his caretaker, who am I? Who do I want to be? And so, addiction and codependency are two sides of the same
Oh
coin.
yeah.
And so,
Talk to a
for
lot of people that say that exact same thing, that the codependency is huge with most
yes,
people. Like it's not even like addicts. It's just something to do with, I don't know, maybe our childhoods. Like I know my dad was always working and my mom was always really, and like it bothered her so much because he wasn't around. And I feel
mhm,
like that's where my codependency issues started. But I feel like that's a lot of people, like
yeah,
starts when they're a child. They don't even understand that they have
mhm,
codependency issues.
right,
That's a big one for so many people.
yeah. Well, and just like you said, codependency doesn't have to involve addiction. There's mothers whose sons are, this star athlete and they're going to get a scholarship, and the mom is codependent with, how to manage his food and his, all of
Yeah.
these things. And so codependency doesn't have to look like managing someone else's addiction. Codependency, the definition is someone else's behavior affecting your ability to be okay. Um,
That makes a lot of sense when you say that, like with your son or your child, because even people like the moms that are really strict with what their children eat, and they make the food themselves, or they'll
yeah.
like also cloth diapers, like they have to be like the perfect mom, and they're so obsessive about it. That
Mhm.
now makes so much sense to me, because before I really only thought of it as a relationship thing, but now I see it's not. It's actually that it goes so deep with everything.
Yes. Yes. And the thing is, so I have a master's in counseling and a master's in marriage and family therapy. And so, um, in family therapy, we talk all the time about triangles, and really life is just triangles on top of triangles. And so with codependency, whatever it is, it's the mom, the son, the sport over here. And so at different times, these people get closer together. At different times, these people get closer together. It's always the triangle, though. And so we can triangulate with anything. And thinking through kind of in the codependency way, it all is constantly moving all the time. And so, with husbands and wives, you can get codependent with the argument of whatever it is. And this is the issue over here. And this is the husband and the wife. And they might move closer and further away and all of that. And I think that's such a great picture kind of for life and how we can approach relationships is like, in this situation, who am I allying with? Like, am I allying with the inanimate object that I can do nothing about? Or am I allying with my partner? Like, what does this look like? And how do I have a functional triangular deal here?
Yeah. Because, like, even like with me, my husband has, like I said, he shuts down, right? So, like, for me, I'll have to sit there. And I feel like that's a part of my codependency too, is to sit there and bug him and bug him and bug him until he tells me what's
Yes.
wrong. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's that part that you said is like the inanimate object part, instead of him just telling me what's wrong. It's like he maybe enjoys the fact that I'm sitting there giving him that kind of attention.
Right.
You
Like,
know?
is it reinforcing the problem? Yeah.
Yeah.
And in with compulsive behaviors, to kind of bring it back to that, the person with the compulsive behavior, they withdraw, and the codependent person just chases them around, and they just chase each other around the board.
And I've
And
done that in
so,
every relationship I've ever been in. I'm
yes,
always the person chasing them around in some form or way.
yes. Yes. And so it can almost feel like what I'm doing is like holy work, because here you are. I have helped you be able to articulate this thing. And so, I think that's one of the patterns that we can all get stuck in, no matter, if it's platonic or romantic or whatever kind of relationship that it is, that we can get stuck in this push pull of, see, I finally was able to help you by pursuing you past the boundary. Um, and I think that that happens so often, just with all of us in general.
Even in friendships, like I'll say, like my best friend and her husband, they always fight. And she always calls me, and it's like me talking to her is like giving her that attention that she seeks.
Yeah, that's
So in the
a great
same sense,
observation.
it
Yeah,
can be in friendships as well as it can be in anything, like you said, with children,
absolutely.
in a friendship. Like it's always she's calling me. It's like she's calling me chaotically crying, freaking out, and she needs me to calm her down, right? And like it's
Right.
gone on for 20 years through our friendship, and now
Yeah.
I see that it's a codependency that we both have with each other because, like I said, I feel like I've helped her and she feels like she got the attention that she was
Mm-hmm.
seeking because she was hurt.
Right. I think that is it's a great observation and real time illustration of what codependency can look like
Because it
in
makes
any
more sense
way.
now to me. It makes more sense to me now that it's not just relationships, it's like love relationships, It's
Yeah.
literally every kind of relationship you're going to have with any kind of person. Your
Mhm.
children, your friends, even people that you don't know. Like, say, somebody, I used to read tarot cards, right? And people would come to me with their issues, and then they would become very dependent on getting a reading all the time. They need
Mhm.
to know, they need to know. And that was creating a codependency. That,
Yeah.
like, even that, like, it's really eye opening, actually. That's all I'm saying. Really, really eye opening.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you shared that because it really opened my eyes. And I'm sure
Oh, I
anybody
love that.
watching this will think the same thing because I think everybody thinks when they hear codependency, they think relationships, like love relationships, but it's not. So
Right.
so much sense. Then when you have people that come to you that have codependency issues, how do you like kind of help them, I guess you could say?
The first thing that we do is we start to talk about boundaries. And when there is codependency, there is enmeshment. And so, when there is enmeshment, there's usually stress on the relationship that goes with that. And so people are overly involved, but there's also passive aggressiveness or frustration or something that goes into that. And so really talking about what are what are healthy boundaries? Does that mean trying to think of some examples. Is that if you start spam calling me, I'm not going to answer? Is
Mm.
that, I have said that I'm going to talk about this at this time, and this is when I'm available to do it. And if you're not, well, then we can do it at another time instead of rearranging the whole thing. Um, so, talking about real boundaries and what that looks like, the next thing that I always do is helping people figure out, like, what are you seeking? Are you looking for validation? Are you looking for love? Like, and how can a lot of people that are in codependent relationships and in compulsive behaviors, they don't know themselves well enough anymore to know what they actually want. And it's really easy to say what we don't want and to know that, but to say what we do want creates a lot of vulnerability, because what if you voice that and your needs don't get met?
We don't even
And
think
so,
about it because I don't
yeah,
always really to my like I don't think about what do I want. I'm like to myself secondary. So I never sit there and think, what do I want? It's
yeah,
more like I trying to, I'm a people pleaser, I'll admit it. So I'm trying to, you know, please my children, please my husband, please my friends, all that kind of stuff.
mm,
And I'm never thinking about what I want. And
yeah,
that's something that like I think a lot of people don't realize that they're
they're
doing.
doing absolutely. Yeah.
So that's a
And
big one.
the thing is we don't want to be just completely, cantankerous and oppositional and no, I'm not going to help anybody do anything. And that's my boundary. Like, that's not helpful either. Um, but when we always prefer other people, we end up an empty tank. And when we're an empty tank, we don't operate as our best selves. And there's the, tendency to be a martyr of, I'm doing all these things and nobody's doing anything for me. And one of the things that I talk about a lot with my clients is discerning and figuring out what is mine to do. Like, did somebody ask me to do this thing for them? Did, is this mine to do? Because if we're doing something that is not ours to do, we're keeping somebody else from doing what is theirs to do. And when we're staying in our own lane, doing what is ours to do, those are growth opportunities. Even if it's hard and even if it's maybe, not exactly what we want, when we're doing what is ours to do, whatever you believe about creation, the universe, and whatever, that is growing in us skills that we would not have if we weren't doing those things. And so it's really unkind to not allow other people to do the same.
Oh, I agree. And it makes a lot of sense too, right? Like I said, it's very eye-opening to hear these things because, like I said, I think we, like, as regular people off the street, have a very basic understanding of these things. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
like, we don't know, like, we're not self-aware enough to understand that this is what's going on, actually. So, like,
yeah.
I'm so grateful to be able to have talked to you about this because honestly, I know I'm not the only person that didn't understand. Do you know what I mean?
That's
And
awesome. I love that.
like so with trauma therapy though, like how like if somebody comes to you with like a big trauma, how do you help? Like what does that look like for treatment?
So that can really look two different ways. I have some people that come in and do ART. I have one client that I see maybe once a month and texts me and is like, "Hey, I want to come in and do ART on this." And I'm like, "Great." And then she leaves for a month and I don't talk to her. I have other clients that I've been seeing for a while that I guess it really depends on, do people, as I'm like thinking through this, do people have complex trauma or is it just regular PTSD?
Mm-hmm.
And so my
Because
sister-in-law
there's
passed away,
PTSD and there's complex PTSD.
complex PTSD. Yes. And so my sister-in-law passed away in November of last year. My husband and I were her caretakers.
Sorry to
And
hear about
so girl. But as I have been doing therapy to recover, I've been doing ART on these things, and it's like, there's so many layers to it all that I can't, it takes a little bit of time to kind of heal from one thing for another one to come up and be like, okay, so that's another part of this. And so, with people that do not have complex PTSD, if they don't want to do talk therapy, I don't blame them.
that.
Um, but for people that do have complex PTSD, usually just diving into their trauma, they don't feel comfortable with that. And so building rapport and getting to know each other and building that trust. I mean, with somebody that's had a lot of trauma, they don't know how to trust people. And
Nope.
so,
I've gone to
um,
counselors and I put my wall up right away and like I know I do and I like and like I just don't know why I do it, but I get it now. It's just because I don't trust them enough to be able to. I don't think they're going to be able to help me. That's what it is.
right. Yeah. And I mean, that's why not every therapist is for everybody. Like, I am not the therapist for everybody. You'll never wonder what I'm thinking. Like, I have a lot of self disclosure. My clients know all about my crazy life. They know about our dogs. They know about my husband. I mean,
I'm the kind of person that would like that and relate to that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
The ones that are very textbook, that's when I shut right down because I feel
yes.
like they're not relating to me. And that's like the personal connection, like that is great. And I feel like that's like why people come to you probably.
Yes, I mean, my just kind of get in where you fit in and let it all hang out. I'm just like, we're all in this together. And I do have, I love my job. I love what I do. I love my clients. I pray for my clients. I'm just really bought in with them. And so their success is my success. And so figuring out, what do I need to do to care for myself in a way that I can show up for my clients in the best way possible?
Yeah.
And so, really understanding myself and where I'm at, and like, what are my compulsive behaviors? Like, what are my blind spots? And, like you said, that self awareness there, of being able to kind of read the room when people come in. And I have had clients that, they don't start talking about their trauma until we've met for 5 or 6 weeks, just because they're really guarded and people have not been safe in their life. And like, it is the gift of a lifetime to me to be able to sit and engage with someone until they're ready to get into that, if they ever are.
Yeah.
Um, And I will say this, all therapists see trauma. Not all therapists are trained to treat trauma. And I did not understand that. I'm like, well, what do you do if you are not a trauma therapist? But I have clients that see me just kind of for adjunct trauma therapy, that they have a regular therapist that they see, but they don't have all the knowledge of the nervous system and how the body works and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really important, as you're coming in, excuse me, as you're coming in and deciding to find some different, more adaptive coping skills, to get a therapist that really understands addiction and trauma. Um, Addiction is so prevalent. I don't understand how a therapist cannot understand addiction, but they don't.
They don't.
Yeah,
Even at the like I even at the methadone clinic, they don't. And that's where the walls come up. And I think that's why people that come to you take a little while to open up because they've had those experiences with other
absolutely.
therapists that are just so either they're really textbook or they're not fully invested in actually helping you. Like one of the ones I've had, she sat there and was like writing an email the whole time I was in there.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well, this is not gonna work. Like I
Yeah,
can't, you're not listening to me at all.
right.
You don't even know what I said. Like if I
Yes,
would have asked her
exactly.
to repeat what I said, she would not have
She would
known.
have been able to. Yeah,
Yeah. So like that's where the difference is huge, right? And that's why I
yeah,
think it takes people a while to open up because they've had the same experiences. Or also, like you said, they're not fully trained in the way that you are, like where you understand exactly how the brain works, exactly how the body holds it in and what it is and how it affects it. And you're also
mhm,
self-aware of yourself and you see people to keep up your own mental health. That
absolutely.
makes that very approachable because it's like, well, she takes care of herself too. It's like I'm not alone talking to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or like a lot of other therapists, they you just feel like I don't know, they
yeah.
don't,
Like they're not a real person.
yeah, like they're just there. I don't know. And it's really like uncomfortable, which is like I'm my addictions doctor is like my therapist. Like
Hmm.
she and I get into like really deep conversations. I'll tell her, like, she's always like, you've always got a story to tell whenever I go in there and stuff like that. And if she has like per se somebody she's training, she'll be like, oh yeah, Jazz has always got a story to tell, but she always
Yeah,
gives me like straight up advice and talks to me like I'm able to like open up to her because I feel like she is actually invested in helping me and listening to me. Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
Whereas like a lot of other people I've seen have not been like that. And
Hmm.
so when I say that, like, oh yeah, like I got sober through a methadone clinic and an addictions doctor, but that's not for everybody because not every doctor is like her. Just like not
Yeah,
every therapist is like you. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's a lot different. But if people want to get a hold of you, how would they be able to do that?
So my website is cwkcounseling.com. There's a lot of information about me on there. There's a video of me holding chickens because we have chickens. Um, and the kind of different therapies that I do. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok at Bruised Banana Counseling. I am much more active on my TikTok than I am on my Instagram. I on my TikTok, I share things kind of about things that I have noticed in therapy that I think would be helpful to other people. Definitely way more on there than on Instagram. I am licensed in Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and Colorado. And so if anybody is in any of those states that's watching this, I could see them. Um, yeah, I love my job. And thanks so much for having me on here today. I learned from you. I hope that this was helpful to you
Oh,
and
it
your
was.
people.
It's definitely helpful for me, especially with understanding codependency, because that was something that I thought I understood, but I
Yeah,
didn't understand. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So that like and I think a lot of people are the same as me because through talking to guests and stuff, they also when they talk about having codependency issues, they talk about relationships. They don't talk about
Mhm.
anything else. They don't talk about
Yeah.
like, their children. And like I even think about like my daughter's side of the family, they're real like they're all about hockey and like they'll get kicked out of hockey games for yelling things and
Oh
stuff
my gosh.
because they're so, but there you go, they're like codependent on their child and they'll be yelling at their kid like ah, like you know what I mean? So they'll get kicked out of the hockey game for being so aggressively like yelling at their kid
Wow.
this and that,
Talk
right?
about trauma.
Uh, well, I'm even my friend, like my mom really pushed me to figure skate, but my friend, it's funny because he's in recovery too, and my mom lives in his granny suite, but his dad used to pull him out of school so that he would go skating. Him and I would skate at 5 a.m. before school. His dad didn't
Wow.
care about school for him. It was hockey, 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 hockey. And then eventually, when he got older, he obviously quit and turned to alcohol, which later
Mm-hmm.
led to other drugs and stuff like that, and sobriety, right? But it's like now I see that his dad was codependent on him being successful in hockey, and it
Yeah,
took the love of hockey away from him because
absolutely.
he likes to go like he's on a farm, so he likes to make a rink now and skate with his kids and stuff because his
Mm.
dad's not sitting there going,
Yeah,
right? So it really, really was so eye-opening to me to help me understand even like my relationships with my friends and some of just the things that have happened to my friends and even just like my daughter's family, even, you know what I mean? So I truly think that this is eye-opening, not just to me, but to a lot of other people, like I said, because
awesome.
they do think codependency is mostly just relationships, and even with trauma therapy, I think a lot of people, like you said, they go see a therapist that doesn't truly treat trauma, but they don't realize that, and they're
Yeah,
not self-aware enough to understand they need to find something different.
somebody that is.
And
Yeah.
same with people who are in 12-step programs. They don't realize that they need to dig a little deeper after they've gotten on their feet. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's when they call like you a dry drunk because you're not
yeah,
really happy. You're still have your character defects, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think this was incredibly eye-opening and I
Well,
really
good.
appreciate it. And do you have any last little bit of advice for people before I let you go?
Um, I think to extend yourself grace. We are all trying as hard as we can, and sometimes that still looks shitty, but showing up for yourself every day, even when you feel tired, even when you don't want to, even when it feels like it's not worth it, showing up for yourself every day is a gift that no one else could ever give you. So,
That's
yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Like, I'm just like, I understand things now. So thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. So,
yeah, I'm happy to.
thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank
And
you very much.
yeah, I will be in touch obviously when this gets released and stuff. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jess.
Bye. Thank you.